Sneakers squeaking against waxed hardwood, spinning leather ripping against a nylon net, a sold-out arena full of people screaming, a rotational player having the night of their life, an unsung hero pulling off a miraculous play. These are some of the things that may come to mind when you think of college basketball, the one major American sport that permeates every big city and small town alike throughout the country. Those may be some of the reasons you love college basketball, but this is what you don't know about why we love college basketball. Welcome to What You Don't Know About Sports, where we delve into the forgotten stories, teams, and athletes of sports history and question widely held takes on today's sports. I'm Matt, and this is Blake.
Hello.
And today we wanted to embrace the Thanksgiving season and participate in the time-honored tradition in churches and schools and around dinner tables this time of year of telling people what we're thankful for. In this case, we wanted to talk about college basketball. Instead of a question to get us started off this episode, Blake, why don't you just hit us up with the first thing that you're thankful for about college basketball?
It's putting me on the spot. Like, the question gets you into the mode sometimes. It's fine.
Nah, we're sending you right to the free throw line on this one.
I know. I haven't warmed up at all. All right. So thing number one for me as to why I'm thankful for college basketball. Matt and I, both grew up in the same general area of North Carolina. Still here, by the way. And we happen to have three very rich tradition basketball programs in the area. As a matter of fact, since 1980, North Carolina State, UNC Chapel Hill, and Duke, for the last 41 seasons, 40 by the pandemic, those three schools have combined for 11 of the 40 national championships. We are spoiled. And when I say we, maybe not less NC State fans, because that happened one time a long time ago, and that's fine. We won't talk about that. But but this area is just prone for fantastic college basketball. Great recruits, great coaches for the most part. Except that early 2000 blimp in Chapel Hill, that was an odd spot, but we won't talk about that. And we're just spoiled. And that is why I believe that it's my favorite sport to watch, is because I'm emotionally tied to a team in it. And this area is just so rich with the UNC Duke rivalry and all the other rivalries that we have here. I think it's the greatest sport. And growing up here, I think, is a big reason why.
Yeah, I got to agree there. I think this is one of the big hotbeds for college basketball here. Indiana, Kentucky, really set aside different than the rest of the country. But it's like you said, there's three major Division I schools that have won championships. Wake Forest is right down the road. They've got a storied history. There are a bunch of those mid-major and smaller D1 schools throughout North Carolina here where we are, just all over the place. And then, like I said in the open, it happens this way in a lot of places in the country, but all of these smaller schools and colleges throughout the country that play in Division II and Division III and NAIA, basketball is a sport that's not as expensive as some of the others. So all of these schools have basketball, men's and women's, if they have a co-ed student body. So I think it's just one of those things that truly is everywhere. And I think we've got some other reasons that make it why, where you live and all that stuff makes a difference. But yeah, no, 100% for me, going to NC State games, going to a local D2 school and being able to do that within 20 or 30 minutes of your home makes a difference for sure.
Yeah.
So
it helps that our college that we both attended winning the national championship, and we did a back-to-back double episode on that. Go back and find it. But they won the national Division II national championship in 2007, and Matt was there for that. I was not, but fantastic time for the city, fantastic time for the school. They still talk about it, so that's just another layer on top of this. All right,
Absolutely.
number one for you. Go.
Number one for me. All right, so I have a theme in my list. As I was coming up with things, I was subconsciously thinking of all the things I hate about college football. Not that I hate college football, but just the things that they do terribly bad and are terribly wrong. And I was coming up with a list of things that I liked about college basketball, and it just happened to be like the opposite. So for me, number one is the way the regular season is structured. I love, because they jump into it in the beginning of the season with all of these special events, all these marquee games, the preseason tournaments that load up the weekend or the week before Thanksgiving, the week after Thanksgiving, into Christmas. Some of them happen, and it's just a great way to get you into the game. It mimics what happens at the end of the year. That week of Thanksgiving, you can show up at any point during the day, turn on the TV, and somebody's playing basketball. And it's a game that's pretty entertaining, evenly matched teams usually. Some of those first rounds are big blowouts, but whatever. And then you get into, after all of that's over, you've got these non-conference games. Some are cupcakes, just like in every other sports, but some are marquee matchups because you don't get penalized for losing a big game. Two top 25 teams playing each other. That doesn't hurt you. Right, it hurts you to lose to a bad team, so you don't need to schedule as many bad teams, and you don't make schedules like 7 years out. You make the schedule a year or two in advance, which just blows my mind. And then as soon as that's over, you're in conference, play. That's a big deal. You're worried about where you're going to finish in the conference, and as soon as that's over, you get the conference tournaments. Everybody gets a chance to win a championship there. It just reminds me, actually, this just hit me. It reminds me of the way soccer, like European soccer is structured. It's almost like you're in multiple competitions throughout the year, and all of them you can hang your hat on. Like winning these preseason tournaments doesn't matter, but at the same time, winning 3 games in 3 days is what you're going to do at the end of the year too. So, I mean, there's something to be gained. There's something to follow. There's something to look at all year, and it's a long season, but it doesn't feel long because it's always shifting what you're thinking about, what you're looking for.
Yep. That was that. We did not know each other's list. We made our list separate, and right before this started, I had to take this off my list because one of my favorite things about college basketball, one of the things I'm thankful for, is the fact that the regular season means something. Like every game means something, and you can tell it means something too. Players aren't taking days off. There's no rest, right? If you're comparing it to the professional basketball, there's no rest. You don't take days off for no reason. Everybody's in there to play as many minutes as possible and to play as hard as they possibly can because these are kids, man. That's literally all they want to do is play basketball. And the structure of the season, the regular season, allows them and assists them in doing that in a way because you make the first few games of the season mean something with the preseason tournaments. And then you've got like the ACC Big 10 or Big 12, one of those matchups, Big 10 matchups right after that. And that goes into December. And then each team probably has a few off random team schedule games and then straight into conference. And then your conferences, like in the ACC, your conference is so competitive. All of those games mean something too. And yes, if you lose to a good team early, and even if you lose to a good team in the middle, hardly ever does anybody run undefeated. I say that after Gonzaga almost won the national championship undefeated last year, but that almost never happens. And that means that it's okay to schedule good teams. It's okay to play tough games during the season. You'll get over it. You'll learn from it. You'll get experience. You got young guys because there's so much turnover. And so it's just an all-around great matchup, like you said, completely opposite from football, where almost the regular season almost means nothing.
Yeah. one point I wanted to make about this is if I was going to fix, I know this is college basketball, but if I was going to fix college football, one of the things I would do is, we talked about it in the Super Bowl episode, put these like bowl games that we've got like 50,000 of, still let people go to these towns and communities for vacation and for travel dollars, tourism money, all that good stuff. But put them on like a travel weekend, like, I don't know, Labor Day weekend at the start of the year, instead of, 2 weeks before Christmas when nobody is off. Like, some of the bowl stuff doesn't make sense anymore. Like, put the marquee matchups at the beginning of the season, let people travel to it. It works for college basketball. And then maybe there's less opposition to a bigger playoff, which, foreshadowing. Anyway.
Foreshadowing. It's what we do here. My turn. Thing number 2 for me.
It's your turn. Yeah, it's your turn.
So another thing that I'm thankful about college basketball is that it's basketball. Hear me out. When you're comparing the college game to the professional game, it's night and day, right? In college basketball, you can have various offensive and defensive schemes that you employ. And yes, the NBA thinks that they play different offenses, but James Harden isn't running any different plays. Like, it's all screen and rolls. There's almost no variation. There's little coaching. Like, some of the coaches are the age of the players, and it's just hard. It's just hard to get that between college and professional in any sport. But there's newness every single year with college basketball. You've got freshmen coming in, and your seniors have to step up, and you can only play but 4 years, and so, like, every one of those years means something to these kids. Like, kind of like we were saying earlier, is they are out there to play their absolute hardest every single night. NBA doesn't do that. And part of my problem with professional basketball with the NBA is LeBron James has been, and I like LeBron, by the way, but LeBron James he's just going to the finals, or he's going to the conference finals every single year. And yes, his greatness should not be overshadowed. We should not be taking that for granted, because that doesn't happen once in a generation. Does he come around? But the staleness of the sport sometimes can get to me. Sometimes it's hard for me to watch like first and second round playoffs for the NBA, because you just know what's going to happen by the end. Like, it doesn't matter who wins this, because you got to play Steph Curry next, or you got to play LeBron and AD next, and it's just like, even the playoffs don't really matter. And I've got a couple stats coming up for you or later that kind of, I don't want to go too far here because I want to save something, but the passion of the college game is just so much different than the professional game. And you can feel it every single game. It's almost like it's almost always a playoff game in college basketball. Fans always seem to be in it. The players are definitely always in it. Every game matters. It's wonderful.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference in strategy. I think the strategy in an NBA game is much more limited. I think it still exists, but I think because the skill of the players, you're much more limited. It is about system more than it is running specific plays, right? This is how we get into what we do. This is who screens. We're trying to get the ball to this guy on this particular moment. And then it's all instinct from there. Then defensively, you're right. It's not, nobody's running a 1-2-2 press in an NBA game. Nobody's got a 3-2 zone from West Virginia. I guess Michigan, well, not even Michigan anymore now, but a 3-2 zone. Yeah, nobody's running a 3-2 zone in the NBA, mostly because you can't, right? Because you're just going to get eat up by the players. So some of that strategy's gone. And you can't practice as much because you're playing 82 games back to backs, 3 games in 4 days, all that stuff. You're not getting out there and practicing for an hour and a half, 2 hours while that's going on, because it wouldn't work out. So, some of that structure and the way it works. And then, yeah, like you said, even in the playoffs, you gotta catch the right series, right? Like the Knicks Hawks series last year was super exciting and interesting, because both teams hadn't been to the playoffs in a while. Both teams were looking to win a game, so both fan bases were really into it. At the end of the day, whoever wins, and I guess the Hawks went on a little run, but you really got to catch the right series early on for it to feel meaningful. But yeah, basketball, it is kind of more pure in a sense. And then I think too, the women's game is more pure than the men's in some cases. It is because it's all below the rim with a few exceptions, right? So it's not the just raw leaping ability in some of the other skills, right? It's more about the actual game strategy, moving the ball around. So I could get with that. College basketball definitely has that on offer. Said something about the fans. I always remember those Florida State games back in the pre-expansion ACC where you knew that Carolina and Duke had to go to Florida State every year, and everybody else would go to Florida State and like nobody would be there. It would be just the weirdest crowd ever. And then Duke and Carolina came to town and they would be out of there. It was like the football crowd showed up at Florida State and it was just a different atmosphere. It was crazy.
Yeah.
You knew that they were going to lose when they went. Like almost every year, one of them was going to lose down there because the crowd was just crazy. And the crowds I just love the crowds in college basketball, like you said.
Yeah. So much different. Like NBA home game, even NBA home games, it's hard to get a chant going. And like it's like no one cares. And it's hard. It's hard as a fan to like get into it because I'm not emotionally tied to your team, right? I just want to watch NBA on a Wednesday night or because it's on ESPN. And then if I'm not emotionally tied to your team, I just want to watch sports. But then your team or your sport is boring sometimes to me that it's just like it can just be hard to watch for me.
And a lot of that excitement, especially in the regular season, is manufactured. Like I am convinced that, I mean, they're all the time like hitting stuff. There's all these pre-made chants, and I'm convinced that they are piping like sound in, right? Some of those defense chants and whatever are not happening because you can look at people in the arena, the part of the crowd you can see everybody's just kind of sitting there looking
not
like
paying attention.
Nobody's chanting. Why are we doing this? It's kind of a manufactured atmosphere. You can tell the difference. I mean, we've gone through a year of COVID with sound that all the time. We know the difference between piped in sound and real sound. Come on now.
The FIFA soccer music during the MLS's back tournament was my favorite. Anyway,
yeah. All right, so it's trivia time. Can't get out of here without a trivia question. But as far as trivia questions go, this is a good one. So, in the history of NCAA basketball, 15 schools have won multiple national titles. 15 schools have won multiple national titles. Can you give me, because some of these are doozies, let me tell you. If you're listening at home and you can get all 15, you're either the biggest basketball fan ever or you're a liar. Because even I off the top of my head was missing two of these.
He said you are a liar.
You're a liar. I was missing two of these, and this is the kind of thing I like to memorize. So yeah, I don't believe you if you get all 15. So I'm not going to ask you to get all 15, but I will ask you to get 10. Can you get 10 of the 15 multiple champions?
10 of the 15. I'll start with Duke, UNC, and State. That seems like an easy way to go, yeah?
Duke, UNC, and NC State are 3. So there's another thing for your first point. 3 of the 15 multiple champions are in the
right
same
here
geographic area. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The counties touch each other. That's how good it is.
Yeah.
So UCLA would be 1.
UCLA has the most, yeah.
Kentucky would be 1.
Second most, yeah.
Indiana has a great program, not at the moment, but historically they have a they have a great program.
They are 5th, so you've already nailed the top 5 plus NC State.
Okay. UConn has won multiple in the 2000s.
UConn has won more than you think. It's 4.
4? I thought 2.
I did too, but they've won 4 titles, which blew my mind.
Wow. Okay.
Because they've all come recently.
Jim Calhoun and what's his name? Anyway. Kansas. Kansas should be on the list, yeah.
Kansas is on the list.
How many is that?
Though Kansas is on the list with 3.
That's surprising.
Yeah, Kansas has always been kind of an underachiever. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You've hit 8 of the 15.
Yeah. Here we go.
So you only got 2 left. You're nailing it.
Villanova has won 2 in the last 6, 7, 8 years.
Yep, for a grand total of 3. And so everything you've got left now are just the 2-time champs, and you only need one of them.
Okay, Florida won back-to-back in the mid-2000s, so that's definitely...
Florida is one of them. Yeah, back-to-back. So now you've hit 10. Can you keep going? Can you get how many of the last 5?
No. Florida was... I think Florida was going to be it. Some recent champions... no. Louisville won recently. Have they won more than one?
Louisville has 2. Yeah, Louisville has 2. They won one back in the 80s, and then they won one recently. Although,
well, they're counting the recent one though, and so that would be.
But they did win a title, pre-strippers and all that other stuff. So,
I mean, just the facts here.
Just the
facts. Also, no, I can't. No, I think that's it.
There's one more that you probably could get, and then there's 3 that you never would have hit. So Michigan State has multiple titles, though the last one came in 2000. So
that's the only title that I would have known, because they won and then Duke won back to back.
That's right. Yep.
Or not back to back, but the next year.
They're another team that's always good and never wins. Very much Kansas like. Okay, so the other 3 with multiple national titles. Cincinnati has 2. Oscar Robertson in the house.
Oh.
Oscar Robertson showing up.
Cincinnati, okay.
Oklahoma State has 2.
Who played at Oklahoma State?
So if you remember back to our Olympic basketball episode, the coach of that Olympic team had been the coach at Oklahoma State.
In the 40s.
So just a classic coach. Yep. So they've won 2 titles. The last one, you would never in 100 years get it.
Just guess the school.
Yeah, you would never, ever, ever get it. Because it happened twice, and it happened in back-to-back seasons, and it's the University of San Francisco. The great Bill Russell went to San Francisco and won back-to-back titles there before he won a title for every finger and appendage on his body with the
and
Celtics.
a toe.
Yeah. So
more 11 or 13.
They were. Those are your 15. Those are your 15.
San Francisco. So, I did. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's nice. That's so neat. This is why I love college basketball.
Yeah.
It's my
favorite. San Francisco and Cincy threw me for a loop when I was trying to do it.
Even Oklahoma, I wouldn't have remembered that coach and where they played. So good stuff.
Yep. Those are the 15. Pretty cool. All right. My turn is next. And as I said, I have a theme. Things that are better in college basketball than they are in college football. And this should come as no surprise to anyone. But the postseason in college basketball is just better than it is in college football, point blank, period, end of story. The reason I say that, I get that every year we have gripes and complaints with 68 teams getting in. Whoever that 35th and 36th and 37th team that's an at-large team, whoever that is like, we are definitely better than them. But here's the thing. That doesn't mean we need to expand the tournament, because I know that we expand the tournament because it makes coaches feel better and they get job security, but then they end up getting fired anyway, because eventually we're like, yeah, you could get in the tournament and you lose in the first round every year, you're fired. So it doesn't even do that. But what it does do, 68 teams, every conference champion is in, the best teams throughout the regular season by a big body of work are in. We may not have the best 68 teams in the country, but there has never been a season where I've or anybody else that's written about the sport since it's gotten to be 64 and 68 teams. There's never been a season where anybody wrote an article saying, man, I think we left the national champion out. This team probably could have won a championship. We didn't put them in the tournament. Like, that doesn't happen. Like,
no. Yeah,
we know that the best team is in the field.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's the best way to crown a champion, having a 6-round, 7-round, in some cases, tournament to determine it, all one-off games. I think you can get hot on any night. I think you can get cold on any night, right? Best of 3, best of 5, best of 7. Those determine who the best team is. I get that. But as far as who's in the field, we know the champion's in there. We don't have to think about it. We don't have to second guess. The champion's in there. We're worried about making sure, who the last team's in is. Maybe that's not fair. But the champion's in the field.
100%.
We can't say that about college football with 100% certainty because it's still a regional sport and we don't let in all the regions every year. Right? Like the West Coast hasn't been represented in half a decade. And if you're listening to this live, they just blew their most recent chance again this week. So, yeah, postseason just works in college basketball, and you get a chance to earn it. Like, even if you screwed up all year, you can get out there, and in your conference tournament, you can earn your spot. You can earn your spot. You can play your way in.
Mm-hmm.
There's something to be said for that. So, I love it.
Yep, and it was a few years ago that because of the competitiveness of the ACC, that they should have had a team or two more in the tournament field, and it was just held against them that the league was so competitive. But that doesn't mean that I believe that like the 9th team in the ACC is going to win 6 straight games in March and April by any means. But it's still good for the sport to have those teams in there. And of course, maybe that 9th team in the ACC is the 40th best team in the country, right? But you've got the chances, right? You can make a strong early season schedule. You can make a strong conference schedule. If just win your tournament, win your conference tournament. You got 4 days. You can do that. Georgia Tech won it last year. Jose Alvarado. I'm never gonna forget that name because he showed up and Georgia Tech won, and that's awesome for the sport.
Blake will tell you that every time something weird happens in the ACC now, I'm just like, man, that reminds me that Georgia Tech won the ACC basketball tournament last year. Can you believe that? Like, I just can't believe it.
Jose, man, great performance by that guy, But yeah, so you're absolutely right. The postseason tournament for college basketball is, in my opinion, bar none, because again, in college sports, it's impossible to play a best of 3, 5, 7 type of postseason tournament. If you do that, you're cutting the field down to like 16 teams again, and that's not fun. You're only letting in conference champions again, and like while that was good for the time, well, not even good for the time because State probably could have won an extra national championship in the 70s if they didn't get screwed by that, but with a David Thompson team. And so many times that failed. And so they're like, hey, let's let in everybody. You win your tournament, you're in, and then we'll take the next 30 something best teams. And I feel like they do the best job of choosing who gets in, right? Because it's a bigger field, but you've got the strength of schedule and stuff, and you just don't see, because the field is so big, you just don't see when the outrage when the college football playoff committee meets. And like a few weeks ago, as of this recording, earlier in this season, Wake Forest was undefeated and Cincinnati was undefeated, and they were barely in the top 10, but like one-loss teams were above them, and it was just freaking people out. But the numbers and stuff made a better argument than they allowed, if that makes sense.
That continues to be the biggest problem. I mean, in college basketball, 357 or whatever the number of D1 schools is, start the season with a chance to play for a national championship. All 357 teams aren't that good. There are probably several hundreds of teams that know they're not going to win a national championship, but they have the opportunity to get to the thing that crowns a national champion and then have a chance to play for it. In college football, that answer is reasonably 8 to 10 schools at the start of the year. Like NC State this year could have gone undefeated. They were never sniffing the college football playoff. Wake Forest was an example of that. They weren't getting in. No. Even if they go undefeated, even if chaos happens, they're not in the field. So until that changes, it's not, to me, a good postseason when you know, and it's the focus of the sport. To me, it's like, there's 120 schools. 110 of us aren't getting in the playoffs, so why do we care about the playoff? Why don't we just focus on our conferences and what's going on and forget the rest?
Yep.
But yeah, college basketball postseason is a good one. Leave it the way it is. Love it.
I like it too. And in that vein, my number 3 thing on my list as to what I'm thankful for in college basketball is the unpredictableness of March Madness. Now, I say that because I don't think unpredictableness is actually a word, but when compared to its professional counterpart, the postseason in college basketball is significantly more unpredictable, and that makes it fun. I was saying earlier, not like ratting on LeBron or Kevin Durant or Steph or whatever, because, like, again, generational talents, we should embrace them while they're here. But sometimes that just doesn't make for exciting regular season and or postseason NBA basketball, because you just know who's going to be playing in a 7-game series at the end. So why waste your time? Kind of like a college football regular season. But so here's something for you. And I counted this, and anyone who's listening, or you, Matt, can fact check me on this. But I counted both twice, and I'm going to give you something.
Like Santa Claus.
The NBA has had one team since the merger in 1970, so over 50 years worth of sample size here, who was not a number 1, 2, or 3 seed in the playoffs, okay, for either conference, win a title. That team was the 95 Rockets, and they won the title as a 6 seed. That is the only, again, let me repeat, that is the only NBA team in the last 40-something years to win an NBA title not being the top 3 in their conference. Okay. The NCAA, since 1980, because the pages I found that gave me this information didn't go beyond that. The NCAA, since 1980, has had 14 teams, not numbers 1, 2, and 3 in the postseason. And you've got 4 number 1s, not 2, 4 number 2s, not 2, 4 number 3s, not 2. 14 teams, not 1, 2s, and 3s, play for the title. There was one year, about 10 years ago, I think it was Florida and UConn or something. They were a 7 and an 8, respectively. Mm-hmm. And UConn won the title as like an 8 or something. And 5 in the last 40 years in the NCAA, 5 teams not ranked in the top 3 of their bracket won the national championship. It's just so much more fun to watch. And I will add this into the unpredictableness of March Madness, but everyone loves your bracket challenges, right? Whether you put money on it or not, gambling's bad, kids, don't do it. But it's still fun. It's bragging rights. It's a lot of luck. People do it for fun. They know nothing about basketball. They'll choose based on colors. They'll choose based on logos. They'll choose based on the cutest jerseys, if you ask my wife. And so it's just more fun. It's more relatable, and just the unpredictableness of it from round 1, from the first Thursday to Sunday of the tournament is worth watching. You can't always say that about many other sports. It's just better.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's a toss up, right? Because on one hand, it's entertainment, so you want to be entertained. The NBA does a good job of the regular season so long, so we know who's good and who's not, and then their postseason does a good job of picking who the best team is, and so you don't get that unpredictability. College basketball does, and it's cool. A lot of times too, it's not as unpredictable. I mean, it's unpredictable, but it's not as crazy and chaos as it looks like, because it's a number 8, and then they get an upset against the number 1 seed, which is big. But then some other upsets happen in their bracket, instead of just kind of bracket luck gets them along. That's fine. And sometimes it's a team that's misseeded. That UConn team that won the title, they had went on a tear. Yeah, well, the one with Kemba Walker before that, they went on a run at the end of the season, went on a run of like the first day of the 16-team Big East tournament, back when that was a thing. They went all the way from the first day to win that one, and it's like people were sleeping on them, and they just kept winning. So sometimes you get a hot team, and it rolls on. But yeah, the unpredictableness is big. It's important. It's what makes it a thing. Like, how many people know that Loyola of Chicago exists simply because of college basketball and a couple of wins in college basketball, or some of these other schools that nobody would have. Davidson with Steph Curry, right? Goes on a couple of runs, and people all of a sudden know that it's a thing. So yeah, I think that unpredictable nature just makes it fun. It makes it exciting, makes you want to watch, and it drives some of the other stuff we've been talking about with the intensity of the audience and the intensity of the players, because there's limited possessions, limited things. Anything could happen, right? This one possession goes wrong, it could change the whole makeup of the game. So yeah.
Yep. That anything could happen is like you said, it can be the unpredictableness can be a wonderful thing, but if your team is on the wrong end of that, and you're going to remember like that when Virginia lost to Virginia lost as a 1 seed, and we're just never going to let them live it down. And Duke has lost in the first round as a 2 seed recently, and
Duke of these loves to lose early. Duke loves to lose early. It's amazing.
And all of these things happen, but if you're a fan of that team, that truly sucks. Like, you go a few months thinking that you might have it, and all it takes is a bad shooting night, right? If you're a classic Duke team and you go cold from the 3-point line, you might get beat, and that's going to suck for you, and that's going to suck for your team, because you had a squad, you thought they were going places, and then so sometimes it can be a little upsetting. But for the general masses, it just makes it more fun to watch. It's just more entertaining, in my opinion.
I love it. All right. My final thing that I am thankful for about college basketball, and I'll get off my college football soapbox. Wait, no, I won't. So I'm just kidding. This one just happened to be something that you could relate tangentially to college football. But I like how in college basketball, there are, from a strategic and recruiting standpoint, there are multiple ways to build your roster. I love that. Any of the sports, college or professional, where you can build a team in many different ways, right? Just like a good video game or a board game, there's got to be multiple strategies to win. Otherwise, it becomes like the NBA, where you got to have the 2 stars and then fill out the team around them, right? But we've seen schools like Duke and Kentucky and Memphis, both with John Calipari, Kansas even, use a roster stocked full of one-and-dones. Let's get as many one-and-dones as we can. We'll complement them with a couple of role players here and there, but we need freshmen every year. Sometimes they'll come back a second year, but we're not going to get a lot of 4-year players, right? The ones we do, we're going to carefully think about so we get, that growth. That's a way to build a roster. We've also seen Virginia have really good teams by not going after those players and really growing players and having guys buy into a system. And over the course of 4 years, they become good as they grow and get better skill-wise, learn some things that the freshmen don't know. It's crazy to think about because they're one of the marquee programs, but we've seen teams like UNC do a mix of the two. They'll get a one and done here and there, but they've also got experience on the roster. You see a lot of dudes at UNC for 3 and 4 years that you wouldn't think of. Florida State has guys that are one and done and whatever, but they've built a roster that is just tall and long.
Huge.
And everybody's 7 feet. They've got the longest arms in the history of mankind. Like they do that on purpose. That's the system they build, and that's what they're looking for. There are other schools that run 4 guards out there every game, right? There's plenty of ways. And again, it reminds me of, not to make this point a bunch, but it reminds me of soccer, because there's so many players, there are so many teams. And so you get multiple ways to build, multiple strategies, multiple things. And I just love that about it, because whatever you're looking for in basketball, you can find a school, you can find a team that does it that way and see if they do it well. Who knows, right? Everybody's got their thing.
Yeah, recruiting in college basketball is huge, and most recently, this transfer portal thing may or may not have caused a few all-time great college basketball coaches to resign or plan a farewell tour. But I think it's good for the schools. It's good for all the programs, and it's good for the sport in general, because it just makes it more competitive and that's entertaining, right? And if somebody wants to leave, they should be able to play right away, and there should be no reason that they can't do that, right? Like, why are you wasting a year of this kid's prime because of a stupid rule? Like, the transfer portal has made a lot of chaos. UNC's got multiple upperclassmen bigs, 3 in particular this season, who came out of nowhere, and they are going to be like significant players on this year's team. But recruiting is just different now. It's so important. You can't just go to AAU. You got to make sure that you're reaching out to these like current college players, because transfers are going to be huge. Yeah. And like you said, with the non-one and done schools, Virginia is a good example. Gonzaga is one too. Like Drew Timme, I think is still, like, he's a National Player of the Year candidate already, and he almost went undefeated on his team last year. He was a sophomore or junior because he's playing this season. But he also had Jalen Suggs, who was like a freshman stud, who's not there anymore. And so that mixture is good. You got to do both if you're going to be successful. And again, another thing about with your soccer analogies, which I love, by the way, speaks to my heart. You get to, like in soccer, you get to tailor your matchups nightly. Like your rosters change, your starters change nightly based on who you're playing, like what kind of a team you're playing. UNC goes and plays whoever they just played, and they've got a bunch of small guys. You might have to start 4 guards, or you start 3 guards and 2 bigs. But then when you go down to Florida State and their point guard is 6'8", you got to do something different, but like everybody in the NBA is 7 foot, and it's just like, boring. But not that bad. That was sarcasm. But no, I agree with you. The ways to build a roster is always fun, especially when you get to do it in like a video game type setting.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah. That transfer portal thing, man, it's good and bad, right? Because you hate to see the kid that was under recruited and he plays real well for a school, and then he's like, you know what, I'm out. I could do better, right? I don't like that part of it. But I do like where a kid goes to, it picks a school, and the coach says, yeah, you're going to be able to play, and we're going to do all this for you, and we're going to make you a star. By the way, you're going to sit on the bench and play 2 minutes a game. Okay, well, you lied to him. He should be able to leave, right? So I get it both ways. I think I do think a lot of the upheaval about the transfer portal is also in part because the NCAA gave everybody a free year, so there are way more kids.
Everybody's a grad transfer.
Yeah, everybody's in college still for a 5th and 6th season, some of them. So there's way too many people. As that clears up, I think there'll be less transfers, but that'll be a self-correcting problem. But yeah, I think it's just one of those things. But yeah, roster building, I love it. It's one of the cool things about sports. One of the cool things to watch about it, if you're interested. So yeah, anything else?
I think we've pretty much covered it all. Again, it's just so fun to watch from the beginning of the season to the end of the season, from the preseason tournaments to the NCAA tournaments. It's always something, and it's one of the sports that that I love watching anybody play. It's like it's not just a thing where like I have my team and I only turn on a game when my team is playing. It's a sport that it's full of youth, it's full of athleticism, it's full of excitement, it's full of camaraderie. It's just I think I've hit my nail on the head too many times. So
you nailed it though.
It's my favorite sport. It's my favorite American sport to watch. European soccer is pretty cool. They're just better over there than we are here for now. That might change soon, but it's my favorite American sport to watch by far.
Probably my second behind baseball, but I love it just as much. But hey, thanks for listening, and don't let any of this distract you from the fact that Blake stole my thunder on this, but don't let any of this distract you from the fact that on March 16th, 2018, number 1 Virginia lost to number 16 UMBC for the first time in the history of the tournament. Yeah. So that's been what you don't know about why we love college basketball. If you got an idea, hit us up. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Thanks. Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of What You Don't Know About Sports. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please leave us a review, 5 stars only, and hit that subscribe button wherever you listen. If you have a great sports story, we want to hear about it. You can connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WYDKAS Podcast, and on our YouTube channel at What You Don't Know About Sports Podcast. All episodes are written, recorded, and edited by us. Stay tuned for the next episode.